Hey guys, I want to do a video today on Matthew 7:6. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. Now I've heard a lot of different interpretations about this verse, but I want to show you what I think it means, and we're going to go to the Old Testament. This is going to also tie in with our study that we're doing on the destruction of Jerusalem, because the things that were happening when Jesus was speaking to the Jewish nation, especially the leaders of the Jewish nation, was also occurring had occurred several hundred years earlier, before the destruction of the first temple. And let me show you the connection, and then I think you'll see exactly what this verse means. So let's go to lessons about pride from the life of King Hezekiah. Now, King Hezekiah was ill and prayed to God. God healed him and extended his life 15 years. Afterwards, King Hezekiah was full of pride, and the Babylonians heard about his illness and that he'd been healed, and then came to visit him. And during the visitation, King Hezekiah showed the Babylonians all the treasures within the temple. All of God's blessings that he blessed them with showed to the Babylonians. And let me show you, and this is a very important story within the Bible. It's 3 times that this is discussed at length in 2 Chronicles 32, in 2 Kings 20, and Isaiah 39. So let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 32 to start, and we'll start with verse 24. In those days Hezekiah was sick to the death, and prayed unto the Lord, and he spake unto them, and he gave him a sign. But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore there was wrath upon him, and upon Judah and Jerusalem. Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah. And Hezekiah had exceeding much riches and honor, and he made himself treasuries for silver and for gold, and for precious stones, and for spices, and for shields, and for all manner of pleasant jewels, storehouses also for the increase of corn and wine and oil, and stalls for all manner of beasts, and coats of flocks. Moreover, he provided him cities and possessions of flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him substance very much. So God blessed Hezekiah extremely, and this was all within Jerusalem during his rulership in the temple. And this is just a representative picture of all the spices and gold and silver and shields and everything that Hezekiah had within the first temple, Solomon's temple. So before going to Isaiah 39 to read more about Hezekiah, let's look earlier in the book of Isaiah in chapter 5. Because Isaiah is relating to the children of Israel a warning. And Jesus relates the same warning through a parable about a vineyard in the New Testament. And he's referring back to Isaiah 5. So let's read this. Starting in verse 1, Now will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill, and he fenced it, and gathered out the stones thereof, and planted it with the choicest vine, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a winepress therein. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes. And now go to, I tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down. And I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. So there's not going to be any rain coming. There's going to be briars and thorns coming up. It's going to be trodden down. All this is a prophecy in the book of Isaiah in chapter 5. So now let's go to chapter 39. And we'll start at verse 1. Again, this is more information about Hezekiah, and him showing the Babylonians the treasures of the temple. So starting at verse 1, at that time, Merodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he had been sick and was recovered. And Hezekiah was glad of them and showed them the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah, and said unto him, What said these men, and from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, They are come from a far country unto me, even from Babylon. Then said he, What have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, All that is in my house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them. Then said Isaiah to Hezekiah, Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come, that all that is in the house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. So Isaiah admonished him extremely in Isaiah chapter 39 about what he did. And although this destruction, this wrath upon Judah and Jerusalem did not occur during the days of Hezekiah, during his generation, because he did repent of a prideful heart, a few decades later it did. And the destruction of Jerusalem occurred, and Babylon came in through Nebuchadnezzar and took the children of Israel into Babylonian captivity and destroyed the city and the temple. So now, with that background, let's get back to what Jesus was trying to relate to the leaders of that generation that he was speaking to. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. They said turn again. So this has happened before. This happened back a few hundred years ago when Hezekiah showed his treasures. He showed that which is holy. He showed his pearls to the dogs, to the swine, to the unbelievers, to the unclean, the Babylonians who worship false idols, had false gods, rejected the true one God, and eventually came in and destroyed everything that God had given them. Jesus is warning the Jewish leaders, the scribes, the Pharisees, the lawyers of that generation, don't do what Hezekiah did, or the same thing's going to happen to you and your people and your city and your temple. Because it had become a den of thieves. And looking at Luke 19, starting at verse 41, this is Jesus' words here. And when he was come near, speaking of Jesus, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the day shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee about, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And he went into the temple, and began to cast them out that sold therein, and them that bought, saying unto them, It is written, My house is the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. But continuing, these end times events that Jesus is relating in the Olivet Discourse. You see this in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21 here in verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And that's exactly what happened. The leaders of the house of Israel did not turn from their evil ways. They continued to do unrighteous judgments. They continued to oppress. They continued to be a respecter of persons. They continued to lust after riches, to lust over wars, like we see in the book of James, all these things that James is telling them not to do. Don't be a respecter of persons. Bridle your tongue. Don't be one of strife and envy. But they didn't do it. And so ultimately, all these things that came upon their generation, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the temple. But just looking at James 4, we talked briefly about what the book was about in the first few chapters. But by the end, just like when Jesus is speaking at the end of, chapters 5 through 7 in Matthew, by the end, he's calling these Jewish leaders hypocrites, and here James is saying, ye adulterers, ye adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. He tells them to submit themselves, to resist the devil, to draw nigh unto God. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners. Purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. He wants to see repentance. That's what he is telling. He's like, you have to stop doing what you're doing, because all these things are going to come upon you. Just like, again, when Jesus is speaking, going back to James 4, if you continue in verse 11, speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judges his brother speaketh evil of the law and judges the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. And just continues, just like in Matthew 7. Jesus says, judge not, that ye be not judged, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. And continues to go on and on, till we get to our verse 6 again. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. Again, he has warned them of the pride that they had, and what was coming, just like had happened in the time of Hezekiah, when he did the same thing. He showed the treasuries to the son of death, Baladan. He was warning them, there's the future son of perdition coming. Don't show him the treasures. Do not make league with this person coming within your generation. But they did. They did. We see that prophesied in Daniel 11, and ultimately the temple, because of that, because the Roman Empire saw the treasures there, ransacked it, just like the Babylonians did several hundred years ago. The beast system. This is the beast system. This is a continuation of the beast system. The head of gold, the Babylonian Empire did it during the times of Hezekiah. The legs of iron, the Roman Empire, did it to this generation. This is what Jesus was warning them not to do, and they did it. They showed the son of perdition the treasures of the temple, and he ultimately took it for himself, burned the temple down, and ultimately the destruction of Jerusalem occurred. And the Levitical system and everything about it, that system was over, finished. But going on in James 5, James says, go to now, you rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, and your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. You have heaped treasure together for the last days. This is the last days of that generation that Jesus warned them about. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Again, you're oppressing your people, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and you've rejected the Messiah, ultimately crucified him. Verse 5, ye have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Ye have condemned and killed the just. Speaking of Jesus Christ, and he doth not resist you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Again, this is an imminent thing, this coming of the Lord to that generation. Behold, the husband waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your heart, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. And if you continue to go in the end of the book of James, it talks about Elijah, or Elias, which is Elisha, and I think, or maybe Elijah, but was a man subject to like passions as we are. And he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. This is the 42 months. This is the same thing that we saw in Isaiah 5, the warning in verse 6. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. We see it in James 5, referring back to this generation of what's to come. The Lord draweth nigh. He's coming soon, and refers at the end of the book of James about this 3 years and 6 months span of no rain. This occurred to that generation. In Revelation 11:6, the two witnesses, they had power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy. And they have power over waters to turn them to blood. How long were the two witnesses witnessing? For 42 months. This is all connected. The book of James, and if you read the book of James and you read Matthew 5-7, you're going to see so many connections between the two. James is telling the Hebrew nation, the children of Israel, the Jewish leaders, the same thing that Jesus did earlier. And they're both warning them of things to come. And Matthew 7:6 about showing the holy things, as we see here. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine. That was simply a warning to the leaders of the Levitical system, those over the temple, not to do what Hezekiah did, and they did. And ultimately, destruction came upon them. And so, we'll do another video soon. God bless.